So ask yourself this question. You want to become a carpenter. You want to learn how to build houses. You want the guy that builds shacks and can't nail a board straight being the one that teaches you? Or do you want to go with a master craftsman? The reality is the United States sells itself as a master craftsman, and all we do is actually produce crap. How many wars have we won in the last 50 years? 0. We didn't beat the Vietnamese. We did not defeat the Iraqis. I mean, we defeated the Iraqi army and yet failed to put the country back together. The only time when the United States actually won a victory in war was in World War II, 75 years ago, where at the end of that conflict, we were able to impose order in Germany and in Japan. And the order in Germany was a shared partnership with the United States and with Russia within the Soviet Union and the British and the French. So the United States is out teaching, how to fight. We've been fighting third-rate goat herders, camel jockeys. And yet, after 20 years in Afghanistan, we got run out of Afghanistan by the Taliban, by a bunch of goat herders. So what does it mean that they're training the Ukrainians? Okay, they've had this training. We've trained the Ukrainians. Look how well the Ukrainians have done in combat. They've done terrible. I mean, they've done terrible. They've not beaten the Russians back. They like to tell the story. Oh, look, we beat the Russians. We forced them away from Kiev. That was a tactical maneuver by the Russian government. In order, they had pinned down the forces. They had brought a portion of the Ukrainian army to that capital. They secured the Ukrainian army secured the perimeter, dug in, and the Russians pull away so that they can concentrate out east. And in the process, you don't see the Ukrainians suddenly redeploy that force to the east to attack the Russians and push the Russians out. Instead, we see one propaganda after another. You got this film of 6 guys with their blue and yellow pole carrying it through the forest, and then they plant it and say, "See, we've entered Russia." If you'd entered Russia, I'd believe it if you come up to a checkpoint where there are Russian guards and you blow them away. Show that. They haven't done that. So then, or the attack on Snake Island, that the elite special forces of Ukraine with a bunch of helicopters tried to take this little pork chop sized piece of rock that's south of Odessa. They got crushed, killed over 60 of their personnel. I think 3 Russians died in that operation. So just the other day, we saw retired American General Barry McCaffrey. He was on television. He was showing this video of this combat aircraft, the Ukrainians shooting down Russian aircraft. Turns out it was from a video game. So the Ukrainians are living in a fantasy land. And unfortunately, a lot of the mainstream military that's in the West and working with NATO are buying this nonsense. And it's sad, it's embarrassing, but you can go on and believe these delusions. I don't know if I assume you're old enough to recall when the United States invaded Baghdad in March of 2003. And as our tanks are rolling into Baghdad and they're being shown, the spokesman for the Iraqi military, we called him Baghdad Bob, was on television saying, "There are no tanks." Well, there comes a point where you can issue denials. You can pretend that reality is not reality. But those tanks ultimately rolled through and he was captured. And what's going to happen with Ukraine is the Ukrainian army, that particularly that's out in the east, they're going to wind up as POWs or as dead. There's no in between. They will either surrender, become prisoners of war, and those that are connected with the Nazis will go into prison camps. Those that are not with Nazi ties will be allowed to go home or will be put in work battalions to repair and rebuild what they've destroyed what Ukraine has destroyed over the last 8 years.